good evening, and happy Monday night. That's an unusual thing to say to our book club, isn't it? But I mean it, because it is Monday night, almost the last Monday in April of 2024. So we are here to celebrate and to engage an amazing book. Ken, I think, went on his, oh my goodness, top 5 list. And Kelly's still not sure she likes it. So that's a fabulous normal range for us. And I expect some rigorous conversation. But before we go there, my friends, I want to take just a moment to do a teeny weeny bit of advertising, because you know who I am. And 2 things to share with you about is that one of them is that we recently did our Sanctuary in the Woods virtual annual meeting. So if you were unable to attend a couple weeks ago, we really do encourage you to grab the link. I put the link in the chat tonight, so make it easy for you. But if you also got our recent email, which you should have, if you're not getting these emails, that would concern me. But the recent email said, Sanctuary returns to sea. Want to come? And so a little bit of information about our upcoming cruise. We're putting a little push on there because, believe it or not, even though it's a November event, they want us to register, what, Cheryl, in June, and then make sure we pay money in August. And, you know, it's, for me, I would never get on a cruise because I would never do this stuff in time. So this email is packed full of where we're going and information to help you register. It's definitely that you can go online on Carnival's page and research all the excursions and all that kind of happy stuff. But in order to be a part of our cruise, of our group number, a Sanctuary at Sea 2024, once you have all that information figured out, you actually have to call in. And so we've given all that information here in this most recent email. If you did not get this email for some reason that has the group sales number and all this type of stuff in for you, you can put your email in the chat and I will fire this off to you during our session tonight. Once again, at the bottom of that email is the information. You click right here and you'll go right to our YouTube room and our YouTube channel, and you'll be able to watch the recording of our annual meeting. Cheryl Meyer, maybe that's all the information I have. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation as always. They're all yours, honey.
Cool. Thank you, everybody, for coming. And thank you, Rose, for recommending the book. And Rose, thank you for writing some questions up. And we're looking forward to hearing, and I'm looking forward to being part of this conversation. All right. Take it away, Rose.
All right. Well, my first question is, did you like or not like the book? And if so, why or why not?
Well, I'm sorry to say, but I did not like the book. And you won't hear that very often from me because I do read a variety of books. But I think that, isn't this book written for young adults?
It is a young adult novel, but it also could be an adult novel as well.
Right. I caught that. Yeah. And I know in my other book club, we had to finally decide that we didn't want to do that anymore. I don't think they developed the characters to the, because the young adults aren't really ready for that. But anyway, that's not the real reason that I didn't care for the book. The real reason I didn't care for the book was that I've had a couple unique opportunities to work with the Parliament of World Religions. And that may sound very ominous, but what I always found interesting, my job, and I was in travel, my job with them was always to get, they originate in Chicago in the late 1800s, by the way. This is not a new group. And so they met all over the world. They do meet all over the world. And they meet every 4 or 5 years. So my job was always to help get the speakers to there, because the speakers were always very renowned and they had to have special requirements. And, everybody wants to ride in the front of the bus and there's a budget and all that sort of thing. So anyway, but doing that, I was first of all fascinated the first year that I did it to find out that many of the speakers were that they wanted to hear from. Remember, this is the World Parliament of Religions. They wanted to hear from people they felt knew a lot about peace. So I often had to bring tribal chieftains in, native peoples, Canada, Africa, America, USA, South America. So I had chieftains and people like that they wanted to hear from. They wanted to hear their peace walk. So there's so much violence in this book. And I did not feel that was reflective of what I've experienced of Native peoples. Because everyone was always so peace oriented. And that just bothered me that this book was so full of, of violence. It's probably the only account by the way, I ever got by being negative. And what I mean by that, when I interviewed with them, I said, well, if you're doing this in Melbourne, Australia, has anyone started to work with the Australian government? They said, why would we do that? And I said, well, if you're going to bring peace-loving people in, they're going to want to bring their sacred objects. And sure enough, that was true, because feathers and certain other implements of their religions, they wanted to bring, and it was complicated to get all that into Australia and other countries that they had their meetings in. So they told me later, you're the only one that asked about that. So we thought you must know a lot. So we don't want any trouble with this meeting. So we chose you. But it was very fun. And by the way, for example, one of the tribes that I worked with was in upstate New York, and they made it clear to me, remember, we are not members. We are not citizens of the United States of America. We are citizens of our own nation. We are sovereign. So I thought, oh, this is going to be fun. So and by the way, you never talk to the chieftains. You always talk to their sons when making arrangements. So they said, we know this is going to be complicated. So the chief and his son flew to Washington, D.C. and met with the Australian embassy to get the visa to get into Australia, because because of the airlines, I had to have a copy of their passport. You should have seen it. It was a yellow piece of paper. And I think the number on it was 79. I don't know if that's the only 79th passport they ever did or whatever. But as I said, everything with them was about peace and their peaceful nature. But again, I learned things from the book, and I'm not glad, sorry I read it, but I want to keep saying over and over that my experience of Native peoples is that they're all peaceful seeking. This was to me, so much violence, and killing a person with spirit just does not resonate with me and what I've learned from them. So,
okay, thank you. How about someone else?
I liked the book because of I was very interested in how they were weaving Catholicism religion with natural,
that was nice.
the natural religion or healing, and how that he was just in two worlds, and how he was able to navigate that. I thought that was very interesting. The role of religion.
I really liked the book. I liked it for a lot of reasons. It took me twice as long to read this book as it would take me to read another book of the same length, because I usually read pretty fast, but this book was so beautifully written. The language, the sentence structure, it was just almost poetry. And so I found myself reading much more slowly than I usually do. And even going back and rereading some passages, like I would read a poem, over and over again. So that was the first thing I liked about it. The second thing I liked about it, and this is really interesting because, we're coming at the same thing from so many different angles. To me, the book was about the prevalence of superstition and the way superstition leads to violence, and how much of that in this book was the result of sick religion, bad religion. And I think that connection needs to be made today, because we have a lot of problems in our world right now that are the result of toxic, sick religion. And it made that connection so powerfully You know, that if you indoctrinate people enough into really sick religious practices, they will eventuate into violence and hatred and prejudices and all kinds of things, you know, and it felt to me like that's what he was trying to say, you know, in the book is look what crazy religion has done to my people, you know, and to my heritage. You know, and we just have so much of that going on today. And I know you've traveled tremendously, Cynthia, also. You know, I've traveled into parts of the world where this is not unusual, even today. When I was in Papua New Guinea, I was totally surprised at the extent to which superstition still governs people's lives every day. You know, and it's in some kind of pseudo religious language and belief system and so forth. But you know, it's just to me, it's really important to make the connection between sick, dysfunctional religion and theology, and hatred and prejudice and violence and the things that are going on, you know, in our world today.
Yeah, well, even, you know, even the real religion in the book of Catholicism, I mean, I was telling Joe earlier that one of the things that kept running through my head the whole time was, oh my God, now one more kid is going to have to deal with the whole Catholic guilt thing and have to go for therapy again, you know? So, I mean, I just was like, you know, Catholicism and the way that it's done there's so much guilt associated with the way people are raised. And, you know, if you don't do this, this is going to happen. If you don't do this, you know, and I just, that's one thing that was hard for me in it too. Well, I agree with you, and there's a lot of that, you know, all of the different religions had some issues in there, you know, that did that, but
I'll tell you, the other impression I had all the way through the book was actually agreeing with what Cynthia was saying about this does not reflect well on indigenous peoples.
No.
You know, and so if it had not been written by, you know, an Hispanic Spanish speaking man, you know, if a white person had written this book, I think it'd be a very different experience. I think because it was written by the person that it was written by, you know, he was trying very much to enlighten us about how his culture had been affected by toxic, dysfunctional religion.
And actually, the author, Anaya, he says that the book he wrote is semi-autobiographical. So there, you know, there has to be some truth, as according to him, in it, because he did relate his life into it. But yeah, you bring up some really great points, Ken and Cheryl and Cynthia. How about someone else?
Christy, we're asking if you liked the book or not.
You know, it was slow to get into it, but once I got into it, I really did like it. I really did like it. And I don't think I've read many. I mean, it's definitely in the top 5 most humorous stories ever. The story of that pageant. I thought I was going to pee my pants. I laughed so hard. I thought it was just written so well, and you could picture it. And I have little brothers, so I could just picture the whole thing. And it was hysterical.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And a nice light. I mean, most of the book was very heavy, but that it would intersperse these little light bits in there that I thought was really cool. So far away from my own experience, there wasn't a lot of context for me to connect to, but I think that's important too.
Yeah. You know, one thing that I thought about the book, and this is through Tony's thoughts, and I have to say, I went to Catholic school for my first 6 years, of schooling, and I'm a product of the guilt and the lessons that the nuns had taught us and everything. But anyway, I could identify with Antonio. But one of the things I thought about the book was about the absence of God in our lives. And there's a couple of quotes that Antonio has. He says, I could not understand why Narciso, who did good in trying to help Ultima, had lost his life, and why Tenorio, who was evil and had taken a life, was free and unpunished. It just did not seem fair. I thought a great deal about God and why he let such things happen. And then he also says too, perhaps I thought God had not seen the murder take place, and that's why he had not punished Tenorio. Perhaps God was too busy in heaven to worry or care about us. So it's totally being disconnected from God. And here Tony is trying to understand who God is and how God can be good. I don't know, that point just really caught me, because a lot of times too, I think, God is somehow absent, or he's just preoccupied with other things than some of the things.
Rose,
Yeah.
I kind of attached on that same scene. And have you heard that song From a Distance?
Oh yeah.
That's what I was like, it's like From a Distance, right?
Yeah.
Because From a Distance is a song that answers that question. Why doesn't God do anything?
Yeah. Oh, that's a good point. Good point.
We all, that's kind of a universal struggle of religious, faithful people, right? You got to come up with some answer for that exact question.
Yeah. Were there other things that struck you as you were reading the book?
I think the symbolism that was prevalent in the book was really, really significant, and it was, I don't know, it was just very palpable to me, with the juniper tree, the bridge, of course, the presence of the river, Ultima's owl.
I was going to say the owl.
Yeah, all of those different things were really, important in the book. And yeah, so it was interesting to me, the symbolism of it.
Yeah, there was one point in the book where those men were coming for Ultima, and they were going to kill her and stuff. It just reminded me, of Christ and the crowd that was there saying, to kill him. And there is that Christian, there are some Christian symbolism in the book that I thought was interesting.
Yeah, I thought Ultima was very much a Christ figure in the book. The person who is persecuted for doing good, the person who always forgives. So there was very definitely, that very strong leitmotif all the way through the book, that Ultima was like a Christ figure.
Yeah, her ability to heal the sick.
Yes, to heal, to forgive. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
When they came after her and they said, well, what was it about those pins that they put in the door and stuff? And they said, if she can walk through the door, then they wouldn't kill her or whatever. But when she walked through the door, those pins fell on the ground. What did that mean?
It just made it ambiguous if her powers were from the occult or they were from God. I thought that was kind of why the storyline went that way. I found that of interest.
I thought one of the things I felt like he was trying to do was to say, whether we are talking about institutional religion like the Catholic Church with its structure and everything, or whether we're talking about these earth-based, pre-literate, he even uses the word pagan a couple of times, earth-centered religions, that Ultima was practicing, the kind of magic religions, that there's good and bad in both.
Mhm.
You know, he was very clear to point out that neither of these ways of understanding spirituality, you know, is devoid of good or of bad. You know, so he really doesn't, he leaves us just kind of hanging, you know, in terms of deciding which one you might side with, you know, by just pointing out, you know, that there is good and bad in both.
Right. Yeah. What did people think of Ultima's powers? Like, what were her powers, and was it more, were they actual or more part of like magical realism?
I thought they were real. You
Yeah,
know,
I was a
she-
believer by the end.
Yeah, I thought that
When
you
she
know,
cured that curse in the uncle,
yeah,
you
but
know,
I
when everything else had failed.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
but a
including-
lot of it has to do with what people believe, but when she's coming to heal them as well, you know, and there are some huge psychological aspects to it as well, right? So um anyway, I thought
But the
her
fact she took some of that illness and put it on Antonio,
right. Hmm.
Yeah.
you know,
And why did she do that? I didn't understand that.
That's a really ancient religious idea. It's where we get the word scapegoat. Um, you know, in ancient Jewish, in the Old Testament, the scapegoat was the goat on Rosh Hashanah. When everybody confesses their sins, they put them all on the goat, and then they run the goat out into the desert, and the goat takes their sins away, you know, from them. And so that idea, you know, is an ancient, very primitive kind of religious idea.
Do you think it had to do with the whole thing of him uh almost being, you know, what them wanting him to be a priest or something, and him being almost like a Christ-like figure? You put the sins on him or something because he's going to be the one that could save the world?
No, I
Or
don't think so. I think he just, his role in this whole thing is to embody and reflect the conflict between the two ideas of what spirituality and religion are in the world. You know, because the biggest symbolism in the whole book, of course, is about whether he's going to follow his mother's people or his father's people. You know, is he going to be a person of the desert, or is he going to be a farmer and a priest? You know, and so that's the whole book is about. You know, the world is a dichotomy, and you're going to experience both of them, and which side are you going to come down on, you know, and what are you going to believe? And so that's why I think he tries to put some value and some disvalue into both sides of that. But I think it's clear that they believed her powers were real.
Right.
You know, very clear that they believed her powers were real.
What did you think about how the townspeople thought of her? I mean, there was some hypocrisy there. She helped so many people, but yet they still kind of looked at her like she was a witch.
people are afraid what they don't understand, right?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and that's really what, like the father at the end of the book when he's talking with Tony, I just thought, oh my God, there were so many words of wisdom from him. And
Yes.
at first I you know, all I heard was about the prairie and, you know, his, you know, whole thing with the working there and everything from the past. But at the end of the book, the father tells Tony, I think most things that people call evil are not evil at all. It is just we don't understand those things, and so we call them evil. And I can think of a lot of things like in our lives, like especially with LGBT people. I mean, I know there are people who think, these people are evil, and it's just because they don't understand, I mean, do you find that true in life or for other
Mhm.
situations too?
Sure. I can't think of a specific example right now, but I
Yeah,
think people are like that when they don't understand something.
yeah, they're afraid.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Well, the way we kill sharks, right? And a lot of snakes. We
More,
call
Christy.
snakes evil and sharks evil
yeah,
when they just do what they do.
yeah, that's for sure. Yeah. Ultima had said to Tony, one of the key things that she said, and this is near the end too, she says the tragic consequences of life can be overcome by the magical strength that resides in the human heart. And I thought that was just so poetical. Would anyone want to address her comment or her well, Carol had mentioned about Tony being in two different worlds.
Mhm.
And I was thinking about the cultural conflicts. Just like even when he started going to school the first year, and as being Hispanic, I guess his lunch was very different than the other kids. The other kids had sandwiches, but he had a tortilla and a um, tamale or whatever. But he ended up, I mean, the kids just laughed at him. And I don't know if you ever had that experience yourself, but he did end up finding some other kids who were Hispanic as well. And they would have lunch together. They wouldn't talk with each other very much at all, but they would just eat together in being, just in camaraderie with, anyway, I just thought that was interesting. Does anyone want to also speak about maybe some of the cultural differences in the book of the various people?
What do you mean, Rose, when you say that?
Well, just the fact, like Tony being in the two different worlds, about him with kind of being in the middle of Catholicism and then the spiritual healing, and then there's also the golden carp, which I'm not quite certain what to make out of the golden carp myself, but if you just wanted to just kind of explore some of the ways that maybe Tony was kind of in different camps, I guess.
I really think this is a coming of age story, right? And
Yeah.
he's
Yes.
quite quite an intelligent and probably more spiritually driven and more enlightened or more caring about those kinds of things than most kids his age, right? And he just is exploring everything all over and trying to figure out, well, if God isn't going to take care of this, or God didn't see what happened with Narciso, and he's, whatever, if this is happening, oh, what about this golden carp? Maybe this is
Mhm.
God, maybe, or what about Ultima's power? God wasn't able to heal that guy, but Ultima was able to. He's just trying to figure it out, And when God doesn't speak to him, when he, has his first communion, he's like, wow, what's going on here? God, I thought God would speak to me as soon as he became part of me. I thought God would speak to me. I thought I would have this knowledge. And so he's just wrestling around with all the realities of what exists around him, and with all those different spiritual things that are crossing over his paths. Yeah.
And the major conflict is between the worlds of his mother and his father.
Mhm.
His
Right.
mother represents an agrarian, settled, peaceful, established, religious culture, and his father represents a wild, untamed, a culture, and they are both pulling at him, and so the whole question of the book is, which is the more authentic way to live? Do you live under the auspices of religious structure, which will make you crazy and believe weird, crazy things, or do you live wild and untamed and end up with all of this violence and everything that goes along with that? And so that's his cultural divide, is the world of his mother versus the world of his father.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
Ken, what's so interesting is that near the end of the book, the father says that his way of life is dying out.
Yes, that was
Right?
yes, that was very interesting. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that was like, I think, the author's way of saying, this is what's happening to my world, in the world today. Yes, that those ways of, like, what we used to call just the Wild West,
Right.
where, there are very few places in the world where you can still live off the grid, free of any kind of structure or accountability, and so and a lot of people celebrate that, and a lot of people lament that.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, I think that was another sign throughout the whole book that the book was written for young adults, because what of us as young adults didn't face these questions? Do we accept the religion of our parents, grandparents? Do we accept what else is happening in our lives? And that was to me part of the theme of the book, was to help people, or sort of discern that that's a struggle everybody goes through.
Yeah, I was thinking about the three older sons who were in the war, and they came back, and their father really wanted the sons to go with him to California, and they had no desire to do so. And being in the war, they became anglicized, so they weren't really staying with the heritage, with the traditions of the heritage, because their father really could have said, look, you're going to be, even though you're adults, you're coming with me. I'm the authority figure. And so that really kind of led a lot of, that really deflated the father. And I don't know, I just thought that was very interesting, that the son, just wanted to go off on their own. I was going to ask too about, like, the gender roles in the book. Like, what did people think about the gender roles within it? Like the role of the mother, the sisters, and the males in the family.
It really seemed like the women carried that spiritual nurturing thing more than the men, other than the priest, right? Other than the priest, it seemed like the women kind of carried that, to me, in the book. That spiritual nurturing, and the men did the work, whether it was the farming work or the other work, or they did that. As for the girls, the sisters, Deborah and Teresa, I'm like, I couldn't get a clue what they were all about. I mean, it's like, what are they in the story for? They just were just like there, and they didn't do anything, I mean, it was weird.
Well, it certainly is a patriarchal type of family structure. With the woman, their main place is in the kitchen and in the home, and taking care of the husband and taking care of the kids. And also too, throughout the book, Tony talked about becoming a man. I mean, here he is, a pipsqueak. He's 7 years old, he's a young guy, but he's thinking, oh, I'm becoming a man now, and this is what men do. And at the end of the book, near the end of the book, Tony, besides he is a man, he's making the decisions for himself. And also too, he tells his mom to at the end, when those men are coming, to take the girls and put them in the bedroom. I mean, here he is given an order, and I guess just from reading, you know, about Hispanic traditional family structures, yeah, as soon as he is becoming a man, and he is able to tell his, you know, to give orders to his mother. I'm sure he's, you know, a good kid and everything, but that's how that culture, or at least at that time, and for that family, you know, was very traditional.
But I'll point out, where were they living? They moved, right? So the dad, for all his I want to live in wild places, moved the family because that's what the mom wanted.
Yeah. Yes.
So it reminds me of that line from My Big Fat Greek Wedding. The man's the head of the household, but the woman is the neck. And the woman can turn the head whichever way she wants.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love that.
I think that's probably true in a lot of in a lot of patriarchal cultures. Like I grew up in the deep South, you know, in the 40s and the 50s, and you couldn't get anywhere patriarchal. But that thing about steel magnolias, that's true.
Mm.
Okay, my mother and my grandmother ran the world.
Mm.
And my father and my grandfather and my brothers and uncles thought they ran the world and pretended and acted like they ran the world. But everybody knew who ran the world, you know, and it was the women.
Yeah, yeah, that's true. You know, I grew up in a bicultural family. My parents are from Italy, and they were very, very patriarchal. I never got to go to a Tigers game at all. So I can kind of, I don't know, it's just seeing Tony in those couple, in those two worlds. I mean, yes, he's a male, and that makes all the difference in the world, you know, when you're living in a traditional family. But yeah, yeah. You know, I was going to say, there was one thing in there, and I have to admit, I was not really pleased with that part of the book, but the kids that Tony hung around with, there was that one scene where they were saying, oh, Tony, you know, why don't you be the priest, and we'll, you know, practice giving our sins to you, you know? And I mean, and then there was the kid Florence who, you know, really had a tragic life because his mom died, his sisters, well, his dad drunk himself to death, his sisters are whores at the whorehouse. Anyway, he's not Catholic, and basically he says, I don't have any sins, which I think he's totally within his, you know, realm or power, whatever, to state that. But the other kids don't want to, you know, won't have it. It's pretty much, I mean, they just turned into a pack of wolves. You know, beat him, kill him, don't let him go free. That's the law. Punish him for not believing in God. I mean, kids can be quite cruel, I think.
Yeah, that was a real Lord of the Flies moment.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
it mirrors what the adults were doing coming after Ultima, right?
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's what they themselves have learned and are carrying on. Yeah. You know, Tony was such a good kid and everything, and I don't know. He, in a way, I mean, there was just so much goodness in Tony as compared to the wildness and the, I don't know, just the uncivil behavior of those kids, you know. But I do have to agree about that one play that they were doing. That was funny. And I was reading something that said that itself had its own place in the book because it's showing a microcosm of society, and things can be so chaotic, and that's how they were in the play as well, you know. So.
For those of you who have seen the movie, is that scene in the movie?
No, it's not. It's not in the movie. No, it's not.
The Christmas play?
The Christmas
Not in the
play.
movie.
and the kids beating up on Florence.
I was
and-
thinking about the Christmas play. Yeah, if that was in the movie.
No, it wasn't. That would have been neat to see, but it wasn't.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Yeah. I was going to ask about that golden carp. What did people make out of that religion? It kind of made the kind of complicated things. But I mean, is it basically just introducing a non-Christian type of religion?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. A nature-based religion.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
What is the name of the movie?
It's the same. It's Bless Me Ultima.
Okay.
And you can watch it free on Tubi, the website Tubi, Tubi. So you don't have to pay for it. Carol and I just watched it yesterday for free, which is nice.
Yeah, I'll watch it.
Yeah.
You know what? I wonder what y'all think. I mean, at the end, the thing that I mean, it was. I think I expected that Ultima was going to die at the end. It was like she came at the beginning, she died at the end. I expected that. But what do you think Antonio's going to become? I mean, when you see all this, where did you guys go with that? Because I'm like, gosh, I wonder where he's going to go, what he's going to do, who he's going to become. Did you guys have any thoughts like that too, or want to see him go a certain way?
Yeah.
Or?
I think he's going to go the way of the author himself. He's going to be a professor at college. He's a
Exactly. That's exactly what I thought.
Really?
A man of learning.
Man of learning.
The man of learning.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
exactly what I thought, which is a different kind of religion. In a
Mhm.
way.
Yes, it is. Yes, it's a passion, and he had that passion from the very beginning.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Mhm.
But says Christy, the college professor. I love that, Christy.
No, but I had that exact thought that you guys just said, that, oh, he was going to be a professor.
Yeah.
I guess I wondered if he would follow somewhat in Ultima's steps,
No.
you know, under her pathway.
I think that
No, I don't
time
think
is
so.
is
No.
gone, like the time of his father.
Right. And
don't-
Ultima, when she was about to die, she told Tony to take all her herbs and everything and
And
burn
burn
them.
'em.
Everything. Yeah. So that's the end. And Ultima means the last in
Right.
Spanish. So yeah. So it's the last. Yeah. Anyone want to add anything else at the end here?
You did good, Rose.
Well,
Thank you. Yay!
and I know that well, I'm a librarian, and I know that different books appeal to different people. Things are very subjective, so I am very glad that for the people who may not, this book might not be their cup of tea or whatever, it's still your opinions are really valid and
Well, I'm
very,
glad you suggested it. Something out of my realm completely.
yeah. And I have to admit, some of the other things the book has read are things I would not have read on my own, but I'm so glad I have read them.
Me too.
Yes, definitely.
And Cynthia, I think many of you know here the name Jim Matulski. And Jim
yeah.
was one of my mentors when I was just starting in my clergy, I guess, my journey. And he said that he challenged himself to read at least one book a year from an author he knew he would completely disagree with their thought, in their line of, and it just to keep his own mind critical. And, as a theologian, or Christy as an educator, obviously, we're critical all the time. We're thinking, we're asking questions. And yet some folks just, they consume. And what they consume, they don't question. They just consume. So Cynthia, Kelly, even though this wasn't your cup of tea, there's something to be said for one, finishing the book anyway, or keeping on going. And two, showing up for a conversation around it, right? Because
Sure.
that's where the back and forth comes from. That's where the dialogue occurs. And you're like, oh God, I hadn't actually read it that way, or I hadn't thought about it from that perspective. And so I just acknowledge that one of the reasons I love this group so much is we don't have to agree. We don't have to all like the book, and no one takes offense if, oh, I suggested that book, and then someone else goes, yeah, I hated that book. It's like we keep going on. So just a little observation from the outside over here, the non-speaking one, most of the time. But Cheryl and I jumped in. I don't even know what it was, Cheryl.
We were watching CBS or a morning show or whatever it
Sunday
was.
morning. I don't know if you love that. We love the Sunday morning show. We it's what is that? CBS Sunday morning. Maybe it's with the big sunflower. And they mentioned a book yesterday that not only hit and was on they were actually talking to the author, and he was on Oprah's book club. It was one of those ones where she gave it out everywhere. I think it might have been during COVID, Cheryl. I'm not sure, because it was also on Obama's. No, that can't be, because it was on Obama's top 5 of his books in 2020.
It was written in 2023, though.
Yeah.
I mean, that was when it was published.
So we're strong arming the bias for next month. Can you hear us?
Well, what was the book? I even watched the show and I don't remember.
The Covenant of Water is what it's
yes. And I tried to look it up. I couldn't. It's not available right now.
I've read that book. I've
read
that book for another book club. It's a wonderful
book. Oh, you have?
It's a wonderful book. Wonderful book. Complex. I think Oprah was very big on it, if I remember correctly.
Yes, she was. Yeah.
And it's you can see why she likes development of character, and it's got a lot of that. Yes, I think we would enjoy that book very much.
Yeah, it's a book about an Indian family, of kind of his story of his mom and his grandmothers in Kerala, South India, and it says it follows over 3 generations from the 1900s to 1970s.
Oh, and again, it's mystical about what happens with water. So
yeah,
it's very, oh yes, you get the mystery of other religions, you get explanation, you get and you get the English influence in India. It's very complicated and very
well,
good.
and it's available on Audible.
Yep.
Yes.
Which makes it legal for me. I'm also putting in, this is from Amazon in the chat there, loads of information about it, but
what other books? We don't have to just jump on that one, because see if anybody else has one, or if you guys want to just read that one.
I would love to read that one, but I also think we might want to consider in the future this new novel 2054 by Admiral James Severides, and he has a co-author, and it's a novel, it's fiction, it's about the possible impact of artificial intelligence, AI, on us by the year 2054.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
And it's getting incredibly good reviews. And so I want to read that. I would love to read this one first, The Covenant of Water, but then I would like to just put that one on the list for us to consider, possibly for the future, because we haven't read anything like that.
No, that sounds really interesting, actually, Ken. Yeah.
It's called 2054. It's the title?
Yes, 2054.
I just had an experience with artificial intelligence. They shut my bank account down for no reason. I had moved some money, and I've been told by friends who are in banking that that's what happened, and moved things around a couple times that I'd never touched before. And it caused my entire Citibank account to be shut down for 5 days.
Oh,
that was all AI.
Yeah.
And that's what's ahead of us.
Yeah.
And I had to go through special channels. And you imagine with everything on auto pay today, how much trouble I had catching up on that.
Oh my gosh, yes. That would be
So,
a mess.
yeah, this AI.
Did they say it was AI because you hadn't done those kind of movements before, so it automatically flagged it or something? Is that what happened?
No human being had any involvement in it happening. And of course, that meant no human being wanted to take any responsibility.
Sure.
yeah.
Really annoying. Yeah.
It was awful. It was awful. And they kept saying, when I would call in, I worked on the phone for 5 days to get it straight. And they would say, oh, just a minute. you need to go to the special department. The name of the department was Know Our Clients.
Oh, God.
And it had a special phone number, and nobody knew anything about me or about why this happened.
My God.
So
Who
I would
who
love
is the
to.
author of that book?
Admiral James Severides, is that his name? He's on TV all the time talking about world events. And he has a co-author. I
It's
think
in the
maybe.
chat, guys. Everything's in the chat.
Oh, thank
Okay,
you.
thank you, Joby.
Yeah, it's
How about-
interesting. The last book that he wrote, Ken, was
Yeah.
called 2034.
Yes,
So
yes, right,
Oh,
yeah.
well, then I was on the right one.
How
Yeah.
about after all
Julie.
these hard books, how about Kristen Hanna's new book, The Women?
I'm listening to it now.
I just finished that. It was great.
That
It
is a fabulous book. It's about
Mhm.
a nurse in Vietnam, Ken. I think you will go through that so fast, you'll be just amazed.
Mm.
Because you lived it. It's
Yeah.
all about those times.
So
Yeah.
it's by Elliot Ackerman, not Admiral, what'd you say?
there's
Severides.
7 authors.
Oh, I
Kelly.
see. It's 2 authors.
Yeah, there's
Okay.
actually 7 of that book.
I'm sorry, because I found the one and then I thought I was on the wrong book.
And Cynthia, the next one you're saying it's called The Women. Do you know who the
Yes.
author is?
Kristen Hanna,
Yeah, we've read Kristen Hanna's something from Kristen Hanna before, I know.
right. And
I know
I've
we read the
Admiral
one
of
about the Dust Bowl. Do you
Oh, really?
remember that one?
Yeah. The Four Winds.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, you guys have the summer figured out. This is good.
Well, the
Okay,
nice
someone's
thing,
gotta write
yeah,
this
the
down.
nice thing about this book,
Cheryl.
it came out in February and it's already on the bestseller list in New York Times.
Oh,
It only came out in February, so
Wow.
it's on a lot of people's minds.
do we want to put these as the next 3 books?
Why
And just
not?
do them in that order?
I like to read ahead.
Yeah.
Cynthia.
All right, well, let's go with how about if we go with the Covenant of Water and then go with
2054.
4 and then go with
The
it's
Women.
called The Women?
The
Yeah.
women.
Mhm.
Women.
And I think people will just cruise through it. It's that kind of book. You can just,
Okay, that'd be cool. Yeah. All right.
That 2054, seems like it's a book that follows 2034 because the 2054 references the past Great War where the American
Yeah,
political system crashed or something.
yeah.
Do you think we need to look at that at all to get the AI part of it?
I saw him being interviewed and he was asked that question and he said no. He said, you know, you don't have to have read. It's not like a
A
sequel.
series. It stands
Yeah.
alone.
Okay.
But
Well, I'm gonna
Kelly,
read it.
you're a big reader. So Kelly, you and Cynthia will probably read 2034. And then you can tell us about that when we're talking about 2054. I already can see this in the future.
There you go.
Yes, I will definitely be reading that one.
All right, well, let's pick a date for this next one anyway, and then we'll only have to figure out the date on the ones after that. What do you guys think of Tuesday, the 28th of May, which is the day after Memorial Day?
It's okay.
Does
Good.
that work for you?
Yep.
Nobody with big Memorial Day plans can't make that?
Well, that's
Not yet.
after Memorial Day.
I'll be
All right.
taking Frank down to MD Anderson that day, so I will have to be a maybe, but I might be able to.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll see what happens. That's his day to go.
Mhm.
Well, Christy, we can, if you don't make it, you know, we will lift you both up in prayer.
I appreciate it.
I'm gonna
Need
write
all
that in.
I can get.
All right. Well, we actually finished.
I've
some
read
of it
Cutting for
early.
Stone by the same author as Covenant of Water, and I remember really liking that one.
I was
Really?
wondering about it.
I read it too, and it's great. It was great.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you all. And also just let's give a clap to Rose for jumping in there.
Yes,
Thank you,
yes,
Rose, for
really.
giving the book and for going through and helping us discuss it. I really appreciate that. That was fun.
Thank you, Rose. It's one thing that Cheryl often says is, I wonder if somebody else would like to host, this week or this month. So if anybody is really moved by a book and they want to go ahead and jump in, Cheryl will probably pretty much always say, yes, yes, and thank you. So I'm going to close our recording.